Recording. I didn't make an opening slide for myself, so I got to remember to look down here now at this monitor. Okay, so I'm going to do goblets tonight. Don't know how I got roped into this. I think, where's John Holderman? He probably skipped out. He's the one that, he probably roped me into this. So anyway, I'm going to do simple goblets tonight. I'm going to show you some that I've turned and then turn a pretty simple one because I turned one yesterday that wasn't all that simple, and it took me about 4 hours, so I decided I can't do the demo on that one. I'll have to do the simple one. So let me show you a few goblets here. I think this might have been the first one. What did I do with that? Here we go. Anyway, it's a thin stem goblet. It's not very big. And the mistake I made, if anybody can see what it is, if you want a natural edge, you don't really want it squared off here on the end, do you? You want it to kind of a little waving. So what did I do wrong? I went in there and I started cutting right down through there from the side. And that made it nice and smooth. And then I realized I didn't want to do it that way. So anyway, I went ahead and finished it. Pretty thin stem for me. And I left a little bit of the bark on the base just for the fun of it. I think the base is supposed to be somewhat smaller than the cup. I don't know for sure. There's a rule. Anybody knows there's a rule on that? Like a third or half or something like that. I don't know. Whatever you like. And then Steve here tonight, Steve Worcester. This picture probably isn't big enough for this one. I can handle that too, I think. Oh, wide shot. Come on, wide shot. Well, anyway. I got it on one. Oh, you got it on one? Okay. No wonder my Zoom wasn't working. Okay. What I like about this one is it's real thin. He did this at Broken Bow many years ago when we sponsored a gallery there. We ran the gallery for him and got free room up there at the lodge and all. It's pretty neat. And so Steve turned this one and gave it to me, a real long stem. That's not the easiest thing in the world to do. And what I really like is this little, I don't think that's called a bead, it's just sharp. And he kept the edge really sharp on that. And that really, I think, is a thing to do. You don't really want to round that off too much. Go ahead and make it sharp. I get it where you can see how thin that is? No, this part here, right there, yeah. Anyway, that's a Steve Worcester, so that's my Steve Worcester in my collection. One of my favorite ones, I do a little bit of piercing every once in a while. And this is a pierced goblet, and I got the natural edge on this one. You can see it wanders all over the place. And you can kind of see how this one warped a little bit as it was drying. It only just cracked a little bit up here in one little spot. But that's about the thinnest I've ever turned anything like that. If you're going to pierce, you need to get it as thin as you dare, because if you double the thickness, you double the time it takes to pierce each hole. And you can sit there for hours piercing and piercing and piercing. And that one went pretty quick. Here's another one with a pretty fancy top on it. I kind of like that one. I'm not going to show you all of these. Kind of like this one here. I like the natural edge on that one. A little bud coming out right up here at the top. And then here's the practice one that I did a couple of days ago just to see if I could still do one. And don't do that. So I got my natural edge on it and got it fairly deep. And I was going to put a little bead down here at the bottom. That takes a little extra time to do that, but it's a nice little feature, I think. That's a terrible bead. And then I put a loose ring on it. And how many people have ever done a loose ring on something? You know it's a little tricky. I couldn't find my special little tools I made with Allen wrenches for getting in there and cutting it loose. So I just grabbed the Allen wrench, sharpened it with a grinder, grabbed it with the vice grips, and stuck it up there and started cutting. And so anyway, I saw how many hours it took to do those two things there. I said, no, I'm not going to do that in the demo. So I'm not going to do it in the demo. So I took the liberty of preparing my logs here. I got a couple of them in case I ruin one of them. I went ahead and put a tenon on one end. I chucked it up between centers, put a tenon on the chuck side here, making sure that the tenon wasn't quite as long as the depth of my jaws, because I don't want it to bottom out. You've got to have a little bit of airspace in there. You want it with the shoulders of the jaw up against the wood. You don't want that thing rocking in there. It's not going to stay in there if it does that. And so I had it between centers. Now, the other thing on goblets is if you got a real symmetrical piece, you're not going to get as fancy of a piece. And this one here, I think, no, this is the one that's really oblong. And so it should really be wild. I forgot what I was going to say. It's pretty green, yeah. It's pretty green. I don't know what kind of wood it is, and I don't remember where I got it, but it's been down a month or two at least. I think. Oh, that's what I was going to get to, Larry. If the pith is right down the center of it, it's going to run right down the stem. And that's the weakest part of that wood, right? So when it does start drying, there's a good chance that stem's going to crumble. So if I want to make a goblet to really keep, I'm going to try to find one that's got the pith running a little off to one side, hopefully down the same side from end to end. And then I can center the log up, and the pith is going to come out over here somewhere on the side, and maybe down here on the bottom, but it's not going to be right in the stem. So that's what I'm trying to avoid, is the pith being in the stem there. This one is pretty close to being right in the middle. But the one I turned a couple of days ago looks pretty stable here. If you can see it. Well, give me a shot of it there, Ron. Anyway, it doesn't look like it's trying to crack there. And it's already lost some of its weight. So we'll see what happens there. And I also took the liberty to save time so I could talk about these. Is I went ahead and drilled a hole. I cheated and drilled a hole out in the center, somewhat near the depth that I'm shooting for. I think I did. And I drilled a couple of holes in there. Doesn't matter which you do first. But I got a Forstner bit, whatever size that is, 2 inches or whatever it is. And I drilled in about to the shank here on it, which I think is about 3 inches in. And then I drilled a little deeper with this bit here, which is a 9/16, I think. And that goes to maybe 3 inches or so. And that should be at the bottom of the cup if it comes out right. And I kind of want to know where that's going to be. I don't want to start getting in there too close and chop it off. So that's how I drill this. And if you're drilling green wood, especially with a bit like this, what's going to happen if you drill too fast? You're going to create steam, right? That wood's going to start swelling up in there, and it's going to clog up these flutes, and you might break the bit. And you're not telling what else you're going to break when you do it. So you got to go in there a little ways, and when the stuff starts coming out and it slows down coming out, it's time to pull that out, clear it, and go back in. So it took maybe 3 passes just going in this far where I felt safe doing that. Next to the worst case is it rips, it grabs the thing and rips it out of your chuck over here, and then you're stuck in there and you can't get it out. So I had that happen too. So anyway, that's the drilling part of it. Okay, so let's get down to the good part. I brought my chuck, but I couldn't get it threaded on there. I'm not sure why. So I'm going to see if I can start hollowing this thing. So this is an in-grain hollowing, right? So there's something you got to watch out for in the end grain. I'm not sure if, well, let's turn this light on here and see if we get any. Can you see inside there at all, Johnny, with your camera? Yeah, a little bit, okay. I use a 3/8, my old trusty 3/8 bowl gouge that I use for everything with kind of a regular, what I call a regular grind. Get this out of here because that's liable to go away. I don't want to get rid of that remote zoom guy. Get rid of my spare log here. Oh, this is a little tool that I use when I'm making the chuck for it. Back in the days when I couldn't afford to buy all these fancy gadgets. So I found a piece of paneling and I cut out the diameters here for inside grip and outside grip on my chuck. So I could hold that up there and know when I had the diameter just about right. And I got lucky on this one today when I turned it. I was having so much fun with that easy rougher, or the wood was just shaving off, and I said, well, I better stop and measure this thing. And if I'd have gone another turn or two, I would have been a little too small. So what I did, I have to come back and start that over again. But I got lucky on that. So that little tool comes in pretty handy. So let's see if I can do any hollowing here. See if I know how to work this lathe. I don't want it coming on full speed. And I tightened both of those up 3 times. You saw me do it, right? Now, that's pretty much out of balance, right? So I think what I should do first is before I start hollowing, I don't want to be messing with all of that bouncing of the lathe and all of that. So I'm going to go ahead and take the wood off here and get this thing balanced up. Does that make sense? So I'm going to just try how many people have an easy rougher? The easy rougher tool? Let's see see how big a mess I can make with that. It's got get the top view there. It's got a carbide cutter on it, little square edge thin thing. And I'm going to see if I can get rid of some of that wood. The lathe's vibrating pretty good there now, so it's not the lathe talking to me, is it? I didn't bring my mask. Now, a real turner would grab what? A roughing gouge and go, and Stuart Batty would have it all trued up, right? I'm not Stuart Batty. Now, I got to remember not to go too far or I've screwed up my natural edge, right? So I've got to leave a band of bark up here on the top of this thing, but I'm not going to leave that much, so go a little bit further. That's a lot better. Okay. So much for that. Okay, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get in here with this tool, do what I want to do or not. What's the trick to this guy? Will that come off? Let's see if it will. So I don't plan to use that for anything now. If I wanted to, when I'm getting down and working on a thin stem, I'd probably want to leave this up here and bring up the tailstock with a cone or something with some leather on it, or stuff some paper towels or something in there, and just gently put a little bit of pressure on that to keep the whole thing from wobbling. But I'm obviously not going to try to do a thin stem here tonight. We might be here all night. And I brought my little curved tool rest with me, which I prefer to use. Get in the picture here. I use that a lot, but I'm going to see if I can do without it tonight. So I want to come in here and come down the side of it. I don't think I tightened that up yet. Come down the side of this thing, dragging it about in this direction. And that way I'm going down grain. If you picture a bunch of soda straws parallel with each other in here, then I'm peeling those up from their backside rather than trying to stick this into the end grain of those soda straws. You can imagine you're not going to get a lot of cutting done that way. But you can come in here and kind of sneak in behind it and hopefully get some wood to come off of there. I get a lot more speed now with the thing balanced a lot better. So let's see if I can make this work here. I'm getting some curlicues there, so it's not all scraping. I've seen Clay Foster do demos where he had the curls going clear up into the rafters. And of course they're about that wide because he's cutting about a ½ inch at a time. But I'm curious to see what it's going to look like up here on the top edge, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm kind of keeping an angle going there because I don't want to go down straight. I want to angle this thing down to make the goblet. And I'm starting to turn a little bit of air here because these are at different depths. So you can't really go hogging out real fast down here. You've got to be a little bit careful for what you're doing. Okay, so now I've got a little more wood there. I'm down to the bark right here, and a little bit of wood there. So I can still go a little deeper, but I'm already getting some contours in this thing. That's what I'm after. Go a little bit further with it. That wood is wet. Okay. You see, I still got a pretty good chunk of wood out here. So that means I can make this part go even deeper by the time I get to the bark there. Okay, got about 2/3 of that out of there. This bark seems to stick on there pretty good. I've got just a little bit of end grain showing there from my chainsaw cut. A little bit further to go. I'm almost just shear scraping at this point. Okay, boy, just a teeny bit there. That should be enough. I have no idea what RPMs are. I never pay any attention. I just whatever feels normal, feels good. Good sharp edge, except right there on the edge, just a little bit more. I can see it's flat right across here too. So I'm pretty much just turning air out in here. A little bit of wood comes by every revolution. That's the wood I'm trying to get rid of. That's good enough for now. So I got the edge, got some nice heartwood showing up here, very asymmetrical. So now let me do some hollowing here. Maybe I can put this a little bit closer. Since that's not even, I got to really be careful with it. Oh, that probably knocked some bark off there. I got to be careful with that. I'm down to the bottom of the Forstner bit hole, so now I've got a little bit more of the other bit hole to go in. I'm a little bit high on this tool rest for that now. It's as far down as that one's going to go. Let's see what my little curved tool rest will do. If it'll fit in there. I don't know if that's any lower or not. There's the beginning of that other bit hole. Oh, there's some wet wood in there. I know there's a bottom of that hole somewhere in there. There it is. If you want some chatter work in the bottom of your goblet, you can just let that thing vibrate a little bit. And, oh, there's a nice little chatter pattern. I could leave that in there if I wanted to. I might leave that in there. I've got more wood to support the whole project by leaving this wood out here. And I feel like I've got better control over doing the inside. If I shape the outside first, I'm going to get down fairly thin down here near the bottom, and then I got all this wood to take out way back here. So it's the principle of working from the far end of your piece towards the chuck, and you try to keep as much support as you can for the wood that's behind where you're making your cuts. So I got a lot of wood supporting that. Still vibrating though and giving me a nice pattern in there. A little bit of a hump. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'm going to smooth this inside up a little bit, and then we'll take the other part of it. What I'm doing, I'm trying to cut with too much of that side of that tool instead of just cutting down near the tip. I'm exposing too much metal to the wood, and that's one thing that makes it vibrate. If I just turn just below the center of that tip, I get my cleanest cuts. I think that's the mistake I'm making to get all that chatter. Just barely get that tip in there. And I just want to feel it and see if I got a pretty smooth curve, a little bit of a hump right in there. I mean, the shape, you're determining the outside shape by what you're putting in here, right? Because your goal is going to be, when you start turning the outside, to make a pretty parallel cut all the way down, so you have even thickness. As it dries, it's less likely to crack if it's fairly thin and you've got the same wall thickness all the way down. If that thickness is wandering all over the place, it's more likely to crack. That's not too bad, but you can have this thing be more of a roundy shape going down, more of a straight line cone shape, or it could be more like this one. This is a little bit concave if you look at it from the outside. It's curving that way a little bit. A little bit of a hump right there. See if I can clean that off of there very carefully. That's not too bad. Yeah, that might be the pith, right about 11. Looks like just a little tiny dot there. You can see it. That light works pretty good. You notice my new light I got here, 4,000 lumens, yeah, 8 million kilowatts, whatever. It's LED, so it's not putting out enough heat for anything. 48 watts. And I used to have these two lights on the side that I had to put 6 batteries in every meeting and all that stuff. Now I just plug it in and let it go. And I might have to get one of those for my shop. If I ever get to turn wood again, I'll have it right over the top instead of these. I got about 4 of these right above my lathe, so I just turn on whichever ones I need. No, I wouldn't mention Woodcraft. No, not at all. Just be sure you got your member card with you to get the discount. Okay, I'm going to let that be it. This is just a demo. I never really sand one of these. I just make them for the fun of it, and you can see I got half a dozen or more of them up here. They look pretty good sitting up on the shelf, but I try to get them as clean as I can, but I don't put any finish on them. I don't do any sanding, because if they're really green, you know how hard it is to sand wet wood anyway. It just clogs up the sandpaper. So I don't really, I feel, I kind of like my cuts there. I could spend another hour on it probably and make it a little better, but I don't have an hour. So I'm going to come back around here and see if I can start working it from here down. I'll decide how much bark I'm going to leave up here. That's a little thick for what I'm looking for here, but I don't want to take very much more off of there. I'm getting pretty close to what I want. It's going to curve down about right here, and then it's going to break off into the stem and then flare it back out for the base. Any questions before I start the outside? Still hear me okay? Okay. Yeah, I used to have a little tool I used to go in and measure that, but I can say, okay, in this area here, I'll talk about the sound system, then it starts acting up, right? So that's even with here. So the bottom of that thing's right about here. So I could put a pencil mark there if I wanted to. If I keep checking my thickness as I go down, I'll know if I'm getting in dangerous territory. Yeah, it's just... Right, they wouldn't want to be drinking out of one like that, yeah. Yeah, it's for the natural edge people, which I think is a lot more interesting than this edge here, because it's just kind of plain. But you wouldn't leave the bark on one that you're going to drink out of anyway. Okay, let me start taking some wood off the side here now. And I should do something that I do a lot. Jimmy wants me to do it now. is just come back and, because that wood moves a little bit. See there? Do you see that move? So I got it a little bit tighter. And if I had it this long, and I was going to put a big, long, thin stem on it, that's when I'd bring the tailstock up here, stuff some paper towels or something in there, and just gently put that in there to keep it from wobbling around. Because it's going to be moving. It's drying right now. And if I spent 3 or 4 hours making this, there'll definitely be some wobble in it by the time I get down to here. Yeah. Just throw a tennis ball in there and jam that guy right in there into the tennis ball, right? Yeah. Yeah. Too bad I don't know any tennis players. I do know some golfers, though. He donated a bunch of golf balls to me because he retired from his golfing career. I don't need any pink golf balls. He gets them out of his swimming pool. Okay, let's see if we can make it look a little more like a goblet now. So I'm going to start up here and just start taking some wood off. Oh, baby. Don't do that. Has that got enough? I can't see the bottom. That's got enough light, doesn't it? That wood cuts like hot butter, doesn't it? Notice how I'm just rotating my body. I'm not doing anything with my arms or my hand. I'm just rotating all the way around on it. Let's see what I've got right up in here now. I might take a little bit more off of there. Just a little more. See, I experiment with my angle of the tool till I see those ribbons coming out. If I'm just seeing dust, I'm scraping. So you just twist a little bit, experiment till you find that magic spot. That's getting pretty close to what I want up here on the top edge, I think. Some interesting colors up here. I'm going to just leave it like that for now. Now I'm going to come in here periodically and feel that and say, oh, there's a lot of wood there, so I can really start hogging it off of here. I forgot to bring my little calipers with me, the little loose calipers, to see if I'm getting down to that 3/8 of an inch or whatever I've picked as my magic number. I'm going to try a little shear scraping up here to see if I can just smooth it up a little bit. Got the tool turned kind of like that. A little rambunctious there. Let's see how big a gouge I got there. Oh, well, I got plenty of wood there. I think that knocked it off a little bit. Let me see what it looks like here. There's nothing off of here that's touching. I'll move this back a little bit more. I guess that was it. Okay, now I got to take a bunch more wood off of here. got to get through that gouge. I think I got through the gouge. That's looking pretty good there. Okay, it's still pretty thick, but I'm not shooting for perfection here. I just want to show you the technique of how you do it. You're going to do it a little bit longer on each of these steps than I would, so you get it down to that 1/16 of an inch, right, Larry? 1/16 of an inch, right? A thick one, yeah. If you're going to pierce it, you better get it down to about 1/16 of an inch. Uh-huh. Right, you're working this way. Yeah. Yeah, I got all this wood back here holding this up. Yeah, see, that's why I did a little shear scraping there, but I got a little bit of a ridge here. It looks fine when you look at it here, but when you get out here, it's got a little bump in it. So I need to try to carefully go in, and I can attack it this way, or I can just get up here and shear scrape it. And I'm going to try shear scraping it. And I'm not going to jam the tool in there again like I did a while ago. I don't know if you can see those fine little shavings coming off on my arm there. See that? Still got a little bit of a ridge there. It's getting there. I think that's good enough. Okay, that's smooth. I got a pretty good curve there. I'm going to just go on down here, knock off some more wood. So that's about a third of it. Do another third here. See, that's the opposite side that I was cutting on the inside, so that one's still nice and sharp, and it's getting a nice cut. And if you wanted to leave a little bead or some kind of a feature here, this would be a place where you could leave some sticking out. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and clean this off. It wouldn't hurt to stop and do a wall thickness check here. See, I got quite a bit of wood there. That center, that bottom is right in there somewhere. Yep, same old-fashioned, old reliable. Okay, I'm going to come back and see if I can kind of clean up that boundary there a little bit. I see a line there. Feels pretty good. I like that color in there. Okay, let's go ahead and take some more off down here. Trying to cut too much edge on there. I got to go back to that tip. Just cut with just below the tip of the tool. Now, probably well below the bottom there. Let's see. Yeah, that's about there. So I can start rounding that off a little bit now to make it transition into the stem. Getting down into mostly heartwood there, so it's going to cut a little bit differently. Don't know what kind of wood it is. Anybody know? What? Firewood, yeah. Dogwood? It's the free wood. I like the free wood. Don't tell Chuck that. Don't tell Craig that either. When I first started turning, I didn't know about green wood, okay? And I was going to Paxton over in Carrollton and buying hardwood and gluing pieces up and everything. And I didn't know anything about turning green wood. And that was quite a revelation to me that I could just go get a log off the street and make something out of it. And so that was a pretty good revelation. I'm going to mess with my tool rest here a little bit. I don't like this spacing I got in here. So I'm going to take advantage of my little curve here, hopefully. Get a little bit closer in here. Isn't that pretty? If I can keep it going. Looking at this line right along here, it's a little bit fat right in there. Too bad. Okay, so I'm not going to do anything back out here, right, Larry? Because I'm not supported very well by that little fairly thin piece there. So, yeah, you can tell the difference between the sharp side and the dull side on this tool. Yeah. Yeah, it takes me about 20 seconds to sharpen this thing with my homemade Ellsworth. I made a homemade Ellsworth when I didn't have $15 to buy one. I made one out of oak. It works great. You put a little bit of a colored pencil, or not pencil, but pen, Sharpie on there to make that whole facet red or whatever. And then when you grind it, you look, and if you don't see any red anymore, it's time to stop. And sometimes it just takes a couple of passes, and it's sharp. Now you could let your imagination go wild and say, well, I kind of like the looks of those things. Maybe I'll make a base that's got some little beads on it, No, I think I'll turn that off. But that's the fun of wood turning, is you can just invent it as you go along. I don't sit down and draw a picture of what I'm going to turn, hardly ever. I just start cutting wood and see what happens. I can cut from either side. I'm ambidextrous, I guess. Well, I got some shavings there, so I'm doing a little bit of scraping and a little bit of slicing. You get catches if you get too ambitious and you try to jam the tool in too much. You got to just approach the cut, letting the bevel touch the wood a little bit, and you rotate the tool until it just starts getting some wood off. I don't know if you can see that or not. See, I'm rubbing the bevel there now. Can you see it? Then I'm just going to rotate the tool a little bit, and it starts coming off. And then when I find that magic angle, I just drag it across the tool rest and try to keep that same relationship to the wood. That's how I do it. But yeah, you get the catches when you get careless like I did a while ago. Start talking with your hands and you jam the tool into the wood. Yeah. And part of this is there's more wood than it looks like here because there's a lot of wood in that empty space. You got to remember that that's there. That's definitely a dull tool. But if I just go in just a little bit of the edge right below the tip, it doesn't complain near as much. Okay, let's take a little more off here just for the fun of it. See, I just rotate that a little bit and the cut changes. I'm just doing a little rotation until I get it right. That's the hardwood there. You can hear the difference cutting through that heartwood. But if I go back to just cutting below the tip with very little metal, it gets a lot easier. Where's John? How's my time doing, John? Oh, good. It's not going to take that long. And you could leave a bead down here near the base if you wanted to. And when I did the loose ring, I left the bead right in the middle here, so I'd have room to approach from either side and undercut that bead and make it come loose. Then I'd tape it with duct tape to one side or the other, finish that edge, and then I'd tape it to the other side and finish that side. But it broke loose. When it broke loose, it was in such a rough state. I had to take my Dremel, little drum sander on my Dremel, and get in there and sand away all that crud that was on the inside of that ring. And that took a little while. And I didn't get it all, but it was good enough for me. Yeah. Now see how it's bouncing? I get a hold of it back here, I can get that under a lot better control. I'm kind of cutting uphill there, and that's not really what I want to be doing, is it? I want to be cutting downhill, but it's working pretty good. come in and do a little shear scraping here. It's already starting to move a little bit. I don't know if you can see the vibration out here. It's already moved that much off center out at this point out here. I certainly couldn't go back in there and do anything on the inside of this thing. Wouldn't even try to sand it. But down here it's still it's still a little bit bumpy down there. Not something you'd make an all-day project unless you got a real humid shop. And it's not going to dry out. Keep spraying it with water. Keep it wet while you're turning it. That'll control it a little bit. Okay, I'm going to finish this thing up here. The design of your base, again, you can do about anything you want to. You can have it pretty flat. You can have a pretty gentle slope like I've got here. A little bit of thickness and then part it off. I got way too much base here, so I could go in and take some of that wood off of there, make everything else a lot easier. That's not too bad. It's a little bit of a ridge right there I need to clean up. I have no idea what kind of wood it is. Found wood. It's very soft. Yeah, it hasn't changed. Oops. Now, there was a little catch right there. That was a catch. Okay, let's get rid of some of this extra wood here. I could go back and do that a lot quicker with that easy scraper, but this is a lot more fun, right, Jimmy? This is more fun than the easy scraper. Look at that. That's probably not a bad diameter there for a goblet that diameter up here. Just all what you like. And what I was told is you want to make the base go in a little bit at the bottom rather than make it straight up and down or sloped like it is now. Undercut it just a little bit and then part it off. So let me see what it looks like here. That doesn't look too bad. I'd probably come in with some sandpaper and clean that up a little bit. You all know how to do that. But that's sloping. You know, you can make it a real thick base. It might crack on you, more likely to crack. You could part it off way back here. But I like a fairly small base. And well, a little bit of a hump there. I'm going to see if I can. Oh, big hump now. Little chatter work. Okay, got to find the right angle here. I got to go downhill with it. Just like Stuart Batty, right? Yeah, when he was 2 years old. Anyway, I'd sand that down. So I'd go in and undercut this base a little bit. Now, if I had all day, I'd make it a longer stem. I'd take it way back to here, make it really long stem. But you got the idea. that up just a little bit right there. So I got a little undercut on that base, and that's pretty smooth. I don't even think I'd need to sand that. A little bit of sanding down in there. So then I would take a parting tool. I'm not going to part this all the way off because I'm a bad guy at parting. I usually end up with a little Japanese saw doing the last quarter of an inch or whatever. And that's one of the things I forgot to bring tonight, my calipers and my little Japanese saw. But I'd want to put this guy pretty close there. I'm not good at it. I'm going to slow it down a bunch. And I want to go in just a little bit, or maybe about right there. And I would just go in and keep parting until I reach over and catch it. If I got my tailstock up there with a tennis ball in it or whatever, I don't have to worry about catching it. I'm going to be turning even slower at the end and just pop it right off of there. Okay. Yeah, I usually do that, yeah. I usually go in and say, well, it's getting a little tight in there. So I come in and say, well, let's widen that path out a little bit. And then it makes that next pass. Every time you pull that out, you get a little different ring around the bottom. But I take my sanding power sander with an 80 grit disc on it, and I just sit there and sand all that out. Because you're not going to reverse chuck. I don't think you're going to reverse chuck one of these things very well and do anything with it. But yeah, you got to give it, and you need a light right above your cut so you can look down in there and actually see where the tool is cutting. And that's the beauty of this big light here. It's giving me even light all the way up and down. Anyway, that's a goblet with no ring and no beads. Any other questions? Okay, I'm done. I have the cap on because that light is pretty good glare. I need to hang something up here, make a little bit of a shade for the viewer. Or just rotate it down a little bit more. We're experimenting with the angle we wanted, so it needs to be rotated down just a hair. Huh?